That ending is so magnificent, and it's oddly. I mean, it's wonderfully unexpected in a good way because you tell a very powerful love story, and then what's so striking is that it becomes the love story is not between Franta and Michelle, but between Franta and Czechoslovakia. You know.
His country.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, because the accumulation of the imagery of the soil, you know, which is of course the symbol of the coach, and it's so. Seeing it for a second time, I was very struck by how wonderfully constructed this picture as it builds to that point. And I thought, well, since the ending is fresh in our mind, I thought I'd ask you simply about the strategy of finding that particular ending. Was it always a target in your mind when you were getting ready to tell the story, or was it something that emerged as a kind of inspiration?
Do you mean like Franta is in prison or the soil?
The Franta in prison and the soil. Was that where you started when you were?
No. Actually, I didn't write the screenplay, so I was just helping, to put things together somehow. But anyway.
Did the three writers that worked on it, did they work together already and it was given to you as a fait accompli, or did you develop it with them?
It was somehow complete, but actually we were continuously working on it after I accept this work, and Jiří Závozda and Jakub Bažant are two actually journalists. You know,
Yes.
they are not script writers. They didn't write any screenplay before. But they are big fans and good players of basketball, and so this is why they had some feeling they would like to make homage to this sport. And the producer Jaroslav Bouček said, "Okay, that's a nice story you brought to me." But he gave them one young script writer, Kristina Nedvědová,
Yes.
girl,
Yes.
who just finished Film Academy in Prague, FAMU, and it was her idea with the soil. Because that's what I think people who are actually journalists and who know facts they know like when the Czech team won in Geneva, or how many people play basketball in one team during one game, whatever. But those tiny things, those tiny details, like that there is repeating, the soil
Yes.
detail. So Christina put in this herself, and I really appreciate it. I like it very much, and then when I entered this project, we started to collaborate together. And actually, I really like this detail with the soil. And what's concerning this, like Franta is in prison, that was actually from the beginning that it shouldn't be happy ending,
Right.
and the main character should be kind of like punished for his
Yes.
love for Czechoslovakia.
Right. It's in America we have the expression "no good deed goes unpunished," and it's sort of like
Exactly.
It fits with the mordant humor here. And I thought, as a director, you do something that I caught on the second viewing, which is when we think of the opening shot. I don't know if you remember the opening shot of the film. It's an aerial shot descending on Franta, and a basketball descends from the sky and comes into his hand. Now, I'm thinking, who threw that basket? Now, the second time I'm watching, who threw that basketball? And he's wandering into the house, and you realize now, knowing how the conclusion it comes to, that at the other end of the film he's in prison. This is his dream of being at home from prison. So the movie builds to a beautiful circle. It comes full circle, and there's many wonderful touches that you've put in there as a director.
I'm very glad that you describe it like this and you read it like this, because actually this the ball coming from heaven,
Yes.
from the sky, and there was idea of director of photography Vladimír Smutný, and I was asking him why, and he really insist like that at the beginning he's coming from the prison, which was not idea which I was very comfortable with, but at the end I said, oh, you're right. I think it could be like this. I mean, the audience who saw it for the first time, they couldn't
don't know. Yeah.
understand it like this, but it makes sense when you think about it later, or you see it for the second time, and actually it works like that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it has the lovely effect on a second viewing that I already know where it's going, so now I'm evaluating from different points of view what it means, and there's a lot of richness there. Because as an American, I'm not familiar with necessarily the history of the basketball, or I'm a little up to speed on Czechoslovakia, but I wanted to ask you just the Franta and it's the different players, his friend Honza. They are actual historical figures, or
Actually, yes. I mean, Franta is put together from two characters.
Yeah.
Some of them are like really 100% historical figures. Some of them, for example, the love story that's our fantasy. That's
right.
our kind of license.
Yes.
But what's concerning this team and their success in Geneva or relative success in Paris in 51, that's based really on real historical facts. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to ask you because just about the acting. I mean, part of the reason why this is so moving is the characters are just beautifully drawn, and I'm thinking particularly. I mean, everybody in it is well cast. I mean, they're just especially the second time around, appreciating the father as a character and the mother, and just how deeply inhabited these characters are. But I wanted to ask you about your work with Philippe Bergina, who plays Fanta, and also Zdenek
Piškula.
Zdenek Piškula, who plays again Honza, and Patricia Volny is fantastic as Michelle.
She's Polish.
She's Polish, yeah. I read too that she's like, but she grew up in Australia, so she's like, so she's.
Yes, she has very, very
polyglot
adventure life. That's true.
Yeah, and I think it's fantastic because each of these characters, from a different end, holds together the story. There's a real ensemble feeling. So, just if you could talk about working a bit with these actors as a director, just your memories of working with them.
I mean, the work itself, it was very fluent and easygoing, because the truth is we were preparing the film quite 1 year before shooting, and since we started shoot in January 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And actually the casting was, I think, March 2017. So, and since August till December, boys, all those players were each week, every week, they went for a training. They went to play basketball. Last 2 months of the training, we really exercise the somehow choreography of those real situations during those fights or during the games, and because it was not possible to improvise on the set, and so it was a long time to kind of make the friendship, and make the atmosphere in the team. And really, this group of young boys, they started to like each other. They understand each other. We started to have sometimes parties together, and looking forward to shooting. And then we shot it, and the atmosphere was really much different than other movies when you cast actors, I don't know, 2 months before shooting.
Yeah, I mean, because the feeling, That's particularly pronounced, that feeling when they all go to Geneva. You feel that these guys are together, and they're fish out of water with with the brothel and everything, but they're having a great time. And I just was curious too, because you feel like you're traveling all these places, but I wondered, well, did you film it just for budgetary or whatever, all in Czechoslovakia, so that you've got locations in Czechoslovakia standing in for Geneva and others? Was that the practical?
The Geneva railway station is in Hradec Králové. We just put the neon sign Geneva and put some historical. It was not so easy as I say it, because if you were recently in Hradec Králové, there is modern lights there, so we had to put those lamps from the pavement, outside, which was enormously expensive. But it was not so expensive as to travel to Geneva and do the same thing in Geneva itself. But and all those match, those championships. It was a set which was built on Výstaviště in Holešovice in Prague. So it's all made out, actually. What I remembered was that we really wanted to make it somehow interesting, that we would travel somewhere, and the budget was so generous that actually we could afford it. And I had one idea to make their kind of split off Franta and Michel in London, in London Underground. Yeah. So we went for location scout to London. There is a one a tube station which is conserved, and all those movies they are shot there.
Right.
And then we count, it would cost like 4 million crowns, and it would be like 2-minute scene where nobody would believe it's really in London. So actually we abandoned this idea.
That's funny.
And then actually, film is a kind of dream and fake. So we did it all in Czech Republic.
Well, what's beautiful about that, and it's nice to know that, because oddly enough, it was more convincing that it was England, because you don't see Big Ben, you don't see any postcards, you see a cobbled street and a bus, and it feels like England.
And the rain.
And the rain, right? So you just buy it. I wanted to ask you a couple of things about the storytelling from a directorial viewpoint, because I thought, watching it for the second time, I was struck by the elegance with which, in the opening scenes, when you see him running with the coach, and the coach is basically appointing him to take over because he has something to take care of, and that already feels ominous. But then the next day he goes jogging, and you've repeated to a degree the same sort of shots of him jogging, but now no one's there, and it's nice because it's almost like a rhyme. You're following the parallel, but now something's off, and it's that the coach isn't there, and you really feel the tug of that physically, and it's really nice. And I wanted to just ask you just about, because that clearly is a directorial choice, and working with it was Vladimir Smutny, the director of photography, and your editor, who was Anna. It's Rindova. They just. Your work as a director, making sure that those scenes fall right, that finding the grammar to tell your story, working with them. If you talk a little about that.
Mr. Smutny is really kind of big name in Czech cinematography. I didn't work with him before, but we have a nice relationship, because when I was a small kid, I was an actor, like child actor, and when I was 10 years old, I was in a bunch of child actors in a movie which he did in 1984 or like that. So I remember him as he was maybe the same age when I am now. Now he's like 76, I think, and still he's kind of much younger than a lot of much younger people than him, and so I was listening to him, and I really admired any kind of advice or any hint he suggested, or sometimes it was like he came to the set and he said, "With this, I don't know what we will do," and then so it was kind of mutual that when I didn't know, he was helping me, and when he admits he doesn't know, I was kind of pushing him like, "Oh, we have to do it like this and this and this," which was very, very interesting for me, because before I worked with DOPs, with director of photographies, which were kind of very strict and very,
By the book,
they knew how to do it without me.
Right.
But Vladimir was very, very open to my ideas,
Yes.
and it was really collaborative work, and I trusted him that he knows how to put kind of like this sexy look,
Yeah.
this because I mean basketball is really kind of it looks very sexy, especially that time in 40s 50s when you saw the costumes, that actually it was like shorts and t-shirt, nothing more. And so we knew that we want to show it, the energy of the young people who are really trying to achieve something, and so this was very like very easy to communicate, with him. And with Anna Rindova, with the editor, we already worked on my previous film Pouta, which was also shown here 7 years ago in Los Angeles. So we are kind of very we have kind of chemistry, and we know how to communicate, and I know how to push her to support me.
And was her influence akin to Christina's in the screenplay? Because a womanly influence to keep it from being just basketball. Because that's there's a moment of dread where you think, oh, is it going to be a sports movie? No, it's a history film. It's got a lot of everything's got emotion in it, and just.
Yes. I think it was exactly like this, and she was hired kind of to clean the script, because the script was actually it was describing all the games, like all the love stories or all the relationship things. They were very short, very brief. But the games, because basketball players wrote it, it was like 30 pages of describing the game, and it's like 0-1, 0-2, 2-1, 2-0. It was really kind of very, very technical, and so we need this kind of professional, point of view, and then kind of human touch, and the kind of like female touch, to watch those young heroes by like little bit another eyes.
Yes, and their relations which carry the games. I want to open it up to questions from the floor. We know we have microphones that are with us to wander through. So okay, good. Go to you, sir. You had your hand up there, yes. Hang on, before you let the microphone come to you, and then ask. Thank you.
Yes, the music in the film was very compelling. And very, very different from black jazz, some important copyrights that must have been kind of pricey to license, to some very compelling techno music. Did you use a music supervisor, or who selected the music?
There was like two important people for the music. It was Jakub Kudláč, who composed the score, including the final techno and Czech anthem at the end. And then it was Jakub Schaffer. He's a piano player, musician. He teaches on Prague Conservatory, and he's a big expert on this historical songs and music. And they have a band, for example, and they were recording the songs with historical instruments. You know, they have really violin or trumpets from 50s or 40s. You know, so it really sounds like that from that time, long time ago. And so he was really big advisor concerning those songs we used. He suggested, like, I don't know, 10 songs to me. I was listening to them and I was trying to put them in the movie, and if the like lyrics, for example, can go with the story, and how is the dynamic of the music. So what's concerning the historical music, I was talking to him, and he was also like teaching Philip Březina playing piano.
Yeah.
When you see Philip's hands, it's not Philip's hands, it's this Jakub Schaffer hands, of course, when he's playing piano or whatever. So and I think this was great, because and the great thing was that we really we could afford some
Classic.
really classic and kind of expensive pieces.
Is there a question from this side of the room over here? Hang on. Okay. Well, let me see. That gentleman up there, yes, and then I'll get to you.
Regarding the music, I'm just curious, what was the thought process behind the song "Just a Closer Walk with Me"? Just a closer walk with thee, and the bar scene when they were dancing to it. What was the thought process behind that?
One second. What was the process?
The thought process behind choosing the song "Just Closer Walk with Me."
Just a closer walk with it. Yeah, it's a religious gospel song, and they were dancing to it in a bar. I'm just trying to find out what.
This is the Ella Fitzgerald, or yes, I think so.
That was not Ella Fitzgerald.
No.
No, it was not.
Oh, but all right, but they're dancing to a gospel
Yes.
sort of, just a closer walk with thee is the lyric, and it has a religious
But
feeling.
it's
but
it's the dancing room in London when they dance together. I mean, Franta with Michelle. Yeah, that's it. Actually, we didn't have any special reason to choose this song, but we were looking for a song which is decent, which is not very kind of dragging attraction, which doesn't actually spoil the dialogue, and it's somehow familiar to you, that it's smooth, it. So you don't need to listen or to, I know, I have to recognize what kind of song it is. It's somehow that you focus on the dialogue of those two people there in a picture, but we didn't chose it that it's some special song. It was like really something what was very possible that they could play it in 1948 in London pub for dancing. So that was the idea, and I like the song very much. Of course, it's gospel, but somehow I know it is some inner energy, which.
Yeah, it's nice that you make choices that are careful for certain reasons, and they're also aesthetic, but they accumulate meaning after the fact, because it's very possible for a viewer to find it. Yeah.
That's it happens always that sometimes it works, more than you expect.
Yeah.
And we just really want some very pleasant song which would which wouldn't disturb you actually, you know, because the dialogue is disturbing a little bit. They are kind of splitting or
Yeah.
finishing the relationship, in fact, you know.
Yeah.
So we are looking for some song which would be the contrast with this feeling.
Gentleman in the white shirt there had a question. If you, I'll show you. It's in the just 2 rows up here. Raise your hand, sir.
Thank you. I just want to ask, is there any story connection between this particular story and the story of the Czechoslovak hockey players arrested before the London Olympic Games?
I don't know if you
There's a short mention in that.
Yeah, it was mentioned that you know how the hockey players ended up, you know, which was actually shortcut to this situation that this Modrý and company, they were already that time in prison. But I mean, the faith of the real, if you're asking for the real.
Yeah, I'm more like asking if you got inspired also by that story. You know?
I don't think so. We just no. I don't think so. Because it the beginning of all this was that Jakub Bažant and Jiří Závazda they decided to make a book about Czech basketball history, Czechoslovakian basketball history. So they started to ask the people who remembered that, you know, who were insiders. And then they thought, oh, it's so wonderful stories. It could be a good movie. And they went to their friend, producer Jaroslav Bouček, who also played basketball when he was young. And he said, okay, I will help it with you. I will collect the money and I will do it. So I think it was not inspired or touched by the story, because those basketball players, they also had somehow they didn't end up in prison. That was our kind of fantasy, but their faith was also not very good. They couldn't play, they couldn't be in representation, they could only coach, for example. Some of them even don't coach. But we took it as a metaphor. We took it as a metaphor because it was not only basketball players. There were also there was Věra Čáslavská, there was other sportsmen, other people, you know, who were they couldn't make their hobby or their profession.
But I think we're ready to wrap. I have one final question that's for it. I think it's a directorial choice. I really marveled at it the second time around. You know, after the coach has bashed his head and has perished in prison, you know, watching the first time, you see all the young men on the team. They're all dressed in black and they're facing out the windows, and there's like a moment where they start to pass the ball around. And it was interesting seeing it the first time. It felt, well, they're absorbing the death of this man, and then they're all on the floor for a while, and that was kind of enigmatic. And I just sort of was watching it, and I sort of rolled along with it. This time around, second time, it felt very poetic, like a distillation of the war, because it sort of seemed like it might be a dream sequence unto itself. You don't know if it's really happening. It's just how it feels to be them having lost their coach. But then suddenly they're all on the ground, and the basketballs are just sort of bouncing along, and you feel, oh, all bodies on the ground, and they all seem like dead bodies, and there's an element of that's the war, at least from their experience. They're having a dreamlike experience of it, and then bang, the next shot is a sort of sunlit shot, and someone saying, well, the war's over. And so it was a great way, I thought, of handling the war without a big battle scene. You somehow felt the inner battle. And I just wanted to ask you about your conception and execution of that scene, because I would think that's a hard thing to script. It's not a thing a journalist is going to put in there. It's got to be a director who's coming up with a way to cover some ground.
I'm happy you asked about that, because that's exactly what we wanted to tell, because the next scene is the war is over. So we somehow need to show the grief after the death of their favorite coach, and the war is over. And I have to admit, I'm not this kind of director who has really like idea and he has to push everybody to fulfill the idea. It was, for example, this
The dribbling of the
dribbling with the ball. That was idea of Vladimir Smutny, the director of photography, because they should be somehow angry. They should like protest, and we wanted to express it without words. We didn't want to like that they are together in the gym and they are talking about it, So we just wanted to express it somehow like by pictures. And the day before shooting, the night before shooting, it was outside of Prague, in Vysočina, quite far away. So we had of course, party after the previous shooting day. And I was sitting there with Jirka Roskot, that ginger guy who played Yellen. And this was his idea. He told me like, oh, there should be expressed somehow, the war is over, something like landscape after battle, landscape after battle, that people are dead, like from the Bosch paintings, What about that? We would be all dead in the gym, and I mean that. My task as a director is not like that I have to, that everything has to be my idea. But I shouldn't defend, or I shouldn't throw away good ideas from other sources. Right. And I said, oh, that's really good. Yeah. But how to explain the rest of the crew? And it was big risk, and we did it. And I just asked them, well, maybe now you are going to do something what you don't understand, but believe me, it will work in the film. Just take off your suits or whatever and lay on the ground. Although costume girls, they were, they are going to lay in this nice suits in this dust, and I think that we were aware in that moment we are doing something which is like kind of poetic, metaphoric, and that it's exactly what we want to express. Yes. Just it would be very difficult to put it in the screenplay or to tell it somebody from Czech TV. Oh, we want to do something like what you don't understand, but so we just did it, and I think it's. It's a very, very nice part of the film, which I like very much.
It sure is, and I think it's so great. Thank you for making that happen and for making this wonderful film, and we can't wait to see what you do next. Really, thank you, and thank you all.